Did we have anything we wanted to discuss before joining everyone? Oh, good.
I'm just going to confirm quickly, Secretariat, can you confirm whether we're in the main room or not?
That is correct. You're in the main room.
Okay, well, there we go. So everyone's here, and we had finished off agenda item 10. I don't think we did public comment and questions, Dave,
not at this
so
point
if
in
there are
time,
any
Chair.
of those. All right. Well, we have another opportunity coming up, so if anyone had any comments or questions around regulatory proposals, please get them submitted and we can deal with those in the next opportunity for comment, which is after agenda item 11. So I'd turn over to you, Dave, to address that.
Item 11, paper 13, to do with the implementation of advising. Second, the IPHC. Just to refresh your memory a little bit, the core purpose of this paper, and it's going to be an ongoing paper at each session of the Commission, whether it's a meeting, I'm not sure.
I'm having a hard time hearing you, Dave. I don't know if it's me or on your end.
Okay, Secretary.
Dave, you're very faint for me as well.
So just a reminder that the purpose of this paper is to provide the Commission with an update on the implementation of the recommendations from the second performance review of the IPHC. This is a paper that we're going to present to you at each work meeting, interim meeting, and annual meeting until all of the recommendations are completed or until the next performance review, so at least another 5 years. As such, we're only going to, at the interim meeting and work meeting, provide an initial update or on any of the key recommendations that have been fulfilled. As a reminder, the panel, which completed its work last year, consisted of a number of independent experts, science experts, experts from other regional fisheries management organizations, non-governmental organizations, legal experts, and also from the two contracting parties. The performance review completed their work, as I said, in late 2019, and the report was adopted and published on the 11th of October and is available via the IPHC website. Again, just a quick refresher is that one of the core findings from the performance review was that the performance review congratulated both the Commission and the Secretariat for the positive strides that it's made in response to or since the first performance review recommendations were made. The report itself was considered at this year's annual meeting, the 96th session, and the Commission requested that moving forward, the paper be developed and it also include various elements updating priorities, responsibilities, timelines for deliverables as outlined within the discussions that were subsequently held at the 6th special session of the Commission in early March of this year. As a result, we have developed that appendix, that annex, which is appended to paper 13. Within that appendix, it outlines all 26 recommendations that were made by the performance review and endorsed by the Commission. As part of that, it has the various updates that we are able to provide on the work completed intersessionally. Now, Chair, I don't intend on stepping through all of those at this particular meeting. primarily because, first of all, it's the interim meeting and we would seek input or comments from the commissioners between now and the annual meeting if you would like to have any additional information provided on updates on the various activities related to those 26 recommendations. And so, Chair, I'm going to pass back to you to see if there are any initial comment based on those recommendations, and if so, we can certainly bring up the paper and go to that specific recommendation. Thank you, Chair. That's correct.
Thanks,
so
Dr.
if there is
Wilson.
anything that you would like to seek a particular
you were saying that you were not going to go through the 26 recommendations now unless there was something particular to focus on, is what I heard, and instead would ask us to review this and come back at the annual meeting if we had any questions about any of the recommendations.
That update.
Is that correct?
We're aware that the Pacific Fisheries Management Council is considering that issue for a motion this week. The September meeting of the Pacific Fisheries Management Council put forward 4 various alternatives or options associated with how that transition could occur.
In agreement with that approach. I had nothing in particular myself that I was going to flag at this meeting, but I'll see if my other commissioners had anything in particular that they wanted to raise. I'm not seeing anything at this point, Dave, so I think there is common agreement among the 6 commissioners of that approach. So I see Peter has raised his hand, so over to you, Peter.
Sorry, I was just one of the, I think it's 15 or 16, and it had to do with the 2A derby style fishing. Just hoping for a little progress, where we're going to be at, where we think we're at the AM. Just a little update.
3, we needed to revisit with some cost estimates, and maybe if we were to tackle that agenda item and finalize it now and then take questions for everything prior up until that, it might be a good way to go. Okay, great. Thank you very much. So, Basher, if you could just hold on, and once we finish the next session, I know we have at least one question or comment for you. As mentioned yesterday, we need to come back to agenda item 6.3, which is the Fishery Independent Setline Survey rationalization, and also looking at some of the simulation cost estimates.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks, Peter. I do not see any other questions, Dave, so there is agreement with what you suggested.
Lara Erickson is going to walk you through those before a final discussion on looking at the 2021 Fishery Independent Setline Survey design. So, Secretary, bring that presentation up, and I'll pass over to Ms. Erickson.
Good afternoon. My audio was working fairly fine, so just
yes,
verifying.
I can hear you fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and just waiting for the presentation to load up. And thank you for an opportunity to present an update on the economic project. I'll present now an update on the IPHC economic study. The project aiming at providing the stakeholders with an accurate and all sector encompassing assessment of the economic impact of the Pacific halibut resource in Canada and the United States. I will start my presentation by explaining the types of economic impact I am interested in this project. The economic effects of changes to harvest levels or any other policy that is affecting the natural resource sector, this can be far-reaching. Besides direct impacts, for fisheries typically measured in terms of landing value, there is a ripple effect for the economy. I will go through various components of the total economic impacts related to commercial and recreational Pacific halibut fishing. I will not go today into technical details about the model, just give you a basic information about the model setup. Here I'll just mention that the approach I took is based on a multi-regional social accounting matrix. This is an extension of a traditional input-output model that earned Leontief a Nobel Prize in 1973. Instead, I'll focus on model inputs and use the time to share some of the preliminary results from the project and how these should be interpreted. I'll wrap up my presentation with the plan for the year ahead and a few words on my other activities at the IPHC. Industries that supply commercial fishing vessels with inputs rely on this demand when making decisions related to their production levels. For example, vessels making more fishing trips purchase more fuel and leave more money in a local store that supplies crew member provisions. More vessels activity means also more business to vessel repair and maintenance or gear suppliers. An increase in landings also brings more employment opportunities, and as a result, more income from wages is in circulation. When spending their incomes, local households support economic activity. This is indispensable to the coastal community's prosperity. Changes in the domestic fisheries output, unless fully substituted by imports, are also associated with production adjustment by industries that rely on the supply of fish, such as seafood processors. Similar to the directly affected sector, any change in production by the forward-linked industries, such as processors, has a similar ripple effect in the economy. The complete path of landed fish from the hook to the plate also includes seafood wholesalers and retailers, and in the case of highly priced fish, such as Pacific halibut, services. Traditionally, the vast majority of Pacific halibut is consumed at white tablecloth restaurants. Any change in gross revenue generated by these industries adds to the economic impact. The economic metrics derived from the social accounting matrix-based model range from the total economic impact on output along the value chain to also impacts on employment and incomes, as well as contribution to the GDP and households' prosperity. Similar effects can be attributed to the recreational sector. By running their businesses, charter operators create demand for fuel, bait fish, boat equipment, and fishing trip provisions. They also create employment opportunities and generate income that, when spent locally, support various local businesses. What is more, anglers themselves contribute to the economy by creating demand for goods and services related to their fishing trips. There's a number of sectors that rely on Pacific halibut fishing, both guided and unguided. These include, for example, lodging, retailers, or restaurants. The interlinked nature of industries in the economy is also creating cross-regional impacts. Economic benefits from the primary area of resource extraction are leaked when inputs are imported or wages earned by non-residents are spent outside the place of employment. At the same time, there's an inflow of economic benefits to the local economies from outside when products are exported or local businesses are bringing cash to the region through support of tourism. We'll call this spillover effect. Let me give you an example. The economic activity generated by vessel maintenance sector, by vessel fishing in Alaska, that is vessel that benefits from Alaska-based resource, could be in the same region when the harvest occur, that is when vessel is serviced in any Alaskan port, but this can also occur elsewhere, for example, when vessel repair and maintenance is done in, for example, Seattle. I will look into the flow of fisheries related incomes. Economic activity is generated locally when households spend their incomes in the local store. But when wages are paid to non-residents, the majority of that money will flow to the place of their primary residence. Similarly, if the quota share is owned by a non-resident, the returns to that holding leak away from the area of resource extraction towards owner's place of residence. Currently, for example, about 40% of Alaska quota share units are reported as owned by residents of other states. The economic impact is also not retained locally when inputs to production are imported. Recreational fishing is also associated with a cross-regional flow of economic benefits. Economic impacts can be created in the area where the angler is fishing, for example, through local lodging provider, but also elsewhere. The angler might opt for equipping himself in the area where he or she normally resides. And one should remember that every rod sold means additional dollar of economic impact of where that product was sold. Before I move further, I would like to formalize definitions of economic impact metrics that I use throughout this presentation. In the context of the model I'm presenting today, the direct economic impacts include changes to Pacific halibut output realized by direct users of the Pacific halibut stock, that is, fishers. The indirect economic impacts provide an estimate of the impact on upstream economic activities associated with supplying intermediate inputs to the Pacific halibut fishing fleet. Indirect effects also include effects attributed to the forward-linked industries such as Pacific halibut processing. The induced economic effects or economic impact cover production and imports associated with spending on consumption of earnings that rely on the Pacific halibut resource. When it comes to the model setup, the most important thing to keep in mind is that the model accommodates the spillover effects that I earlier mentioned. The model is designed to calculate economic impacts for 3 primary Pacific halibut producing regions, that is Alaska, British Columbia, and the US West Coast, but also residual regions to account for these cross-boundary effects of Pacific halibut fishing. So the regions incorporated in the model include also the rest of the US, the rest of Canada, and the rest of the world. The current version of the model is built using a broad set of secondary data sources. The model relies on a number of fisheries-related statistics available mainly through NOAA and DFO. Even though explicitly built with the purpose of assessing the Pacific halibut-dependent industries, the social accounting matrix model also requires input on supply and use by non-fisheries industries in the economy and supplementary data on household accounts. These are sourced from various governmental agencies, including US Bureau of Economic Analysis, US Census, and Statistics Canada. More accuracy of the results can be, however, achieved by incorporating into the model primary economic data collected directly from members of Pacific halibut-dependent sectors. An essential input to the social accounting matrix model is data on production structure, that is data on the distribution of revenue between profit and expenditure items. And that brings me to our primary data collection efforts that were already mentioned by Lara yesterday. In order to accurately capture the economic impact described, we designed a series of surveys to gather information from the Pacific halibut sectors, that is, harvesters, processors, and charter business owners. The surveys are aimed at the commercial vessel owners and processing plant operators have been revised in comparison to these announced during the last annual meeting. And note that particularly the survey for processors have been significantly simplified. I would also like to announce today the new effort to collect data related to sport fishing. Under the link here, there is a brand new survey aimed at charter business owners. Here, a big thank you to the pilot survey participants who provided a very valuable input and comment on the draft. The revised version of the survey that you will find under the link here incorporates suggestions that came from all IPHC regions from Alaska to the US West Coast. IPHC stakeholders are encouraged to fill survey form and contribute to the assessment of the importance of Pacific halibut research to the economy of Canada and the United States. The new survey forms are available now as easy to fill and web-based applications available on a computer or smartphone. You can click on those links here on the slide to access these forms. While the current version of the model incorporates only secondary data sources, the plan is to revise the model with IPHC collected data. Until then, note that the results are conditional on the adopted assumptions for the component for which data were not available. Before I move to the results, I would also like to take a minute and talk about the impact of COVID-19 on the primary data collection. The pandemic turned out to be a major impediment to successful primary data collection in 2020, mainly because it was a totally new effort and it was more difficult to introduce this new effort to stakeholders in these challenging times. The survey announcement happened shortly before the outbreak that shifted the focus of the participants of the Pacific halibut fishery. An intensified effort to reach out to commercial vessel operators was made through the IPHC fisheries data specialists who distributed a paper version of the survey at ports. However, to this date, too few responses have been received to make reliable estimates for the sector. The new survey forms allow the participants to the Pacific halibut fisheries, both commercial and recreational, to fill this survey for 2020, but also retrospectively submit information for 2019. We'll leave the choice to the survey participants, but I would like to note the benefits of filling the form for each year. The data for 2019, covering pre-COVID period, can be considered a baseline suitable for drawing conclusions under normal circumstances, and it's probably much more suitable for using it for predictions. However, data for 2020, covering an abnormal year of operations, can be used to assess losses incurred by the Pacific halibut sector and also assess the resilience of the sector to unfavorable exogenous circumstances. Moreover, if the project continues and data for 2021 are collected, the project also could inform on the response to the crisis and undertake an analysis of the path to recovery. Nevertheless, I would like to share today some of the preliminary results. Note please that these are limited to the commercial sector. The inclusion of the recreational sector in the model is underway, and I don't have the numbers for comparison at this time. The preliminary results suggest that Pacific halibut commercial fishing total estimated impact in 2018 amounts to over $240 US in GDP, over 120 million US in labor income, over 4,100 jobs, and about 130 US in household income. The total impact in terms of output is estimated at over 600 million US, and this is about 4.7 times the fishery output value of $129 million recorded for 2018. This estimate is the total economic impact, the sum of direct, indirect, and induced effects from changes to the Pacific halibut fishing sector, as well as indirect and induced effects associated with the forward-linked Pacific halibut processing sector, keeping in mind the definitions that I presented earlier. While the presented just now results are intended to highlight the potential magnitude of effects following changes to Pacific halibut landings and the importance of considering the whole suite of metrics when assessing the economic impact, the complexity of Pacific halibut supply side restrictions in the form of region-based allocations suggests the need for a tool enabling regulators to assess various combinations of TAC allocations. To address that, the results I presented are complemented by an interactive web-based tool allowing users to estimate and visualize joint effects based on custom changes that are simultaneously applied to all IPHC managed Pacific halibut producing areas. Here on the slide, I have a snapshot of the tool that is available online, and you can interact with this tool using the link available here, as well as on the Relaunch Economic Studies section on the IPHC website. The interactive tool allows users to select the type of impact to be calculated. One can compare direct, indirect, and induced effects, as well as effects including forward-linked processing. The economic metrics available include output, contribution to the GDP, wages, employment, and households' income. These can be chosen depending on the management action priority in mind. Here we can also see how the multi-regional impacts might play out. For example, in this chosen changes or adjustment of the tax, increase in Alaska is affecting also other regions. So even if there is a decrease on the West Coast, then the net effect might be still positive in all areas. But detailed results or detailed combination of different changes can be assessed using the tool I mentioned. So to conclude, the model is designed to give a comprehensive understanding of the economic impact of a Pacific halibut resource. The adopted methodology provides a tangible estimate of economic interdependencies, highlighting the fact that the resource is supporting numerous industries and that supply commercial fishing, as well as rely on its inputs for relying on its outputs for continuous activity. The model also accounts for cross-regional effects to accurately assess the transboundary flow of benefits. As such, the model is intended as a support tool for decision-making, and its utility will be fully realized when remaining sectors, particularly the recreational sector, are included. The current results suggest that the revenue generated by Pacific halibut at the harvest stage accounts only for a fraction of economic activity that would be foregone if the resource was not available to commercial fishers. Besides supporting production by other industries, the sector also contributes to the Canada's and United States GDP and has considerable impact on employment in both countries. So understanding such a broad scope of impacts is essential for designing policies with desired effects, depending on the regulator's priorities. Moving forward, there are a few things that I am planning to add to the model. First of all, my priority is to include the recreational sector. This is more difficult with secondary data, so I hope for a broad participation of the sector in the survey. Survey data will be also used to revise results for the commercial sector that are currently presented. As a part of a project, I am also looking at informing stakeholders on community impacts of Pacific halibut or at least impacts specific to IPHC regulatory areas or biological regions. Over the next year, I will be working on translating the regional effects to estimates at a final spatial scale. Much thought is also being put into understanding the impact of COVID-19 and how to address that in the model covering 2020. An important extension to consider is also a move from a currently static model to a dynamic model. The dynamic model would incorporate price responsiveness to the total supply of Pacific halibut. While moving to a dynamic model is suggested extension beyond the 2 years time frame of the current project, providing a clear pathway to the most robust economic impact assessment, is an integral part of the conclusion of the current phase of the project. I will wrap up my presentation by mentioning other activities at the IPHC. Moving forward, the plan is to routinely provide economic perspective on regulatory proposals, while the sustainability of the resource is uncompromisable. A good understanding of how a regulatory change is going to affect the resource stakeholders should always be sought as a part of the decision-making process. I will also continue providing economics-oriented inputs to research activities when needed, as I did, for example, to the paper on the size limits analysis prepared for this meeting. Moreover, there's a great deal of potential in adding economic metrics to the MSc work at the IPHC. With the now fully functional model, you should expect more cross-disciplinary exchanges and new insights on the work you've been hearing about from Alan. Thank you very much, and I can take questions.
Thanks very much. Are there questions? Chris.
I'm still figuring out my buttons, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. I don't have a question, just a comment. I appreciate the presentation, Dr. Hudson. I hope I say this right, Hudson-Zach. I think this is really, we get tons and tons, and I've been in this process for 30 years of biological information on halibut, and having this component added to our body of information is fantastic. And refer back to your slide 13 about the potential moving forward to use this information. So just really appreciate that we've added this to our body of information. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Neil.
For the presentation, Dr. Hutchinsack. I noted on one of your slides, I didn't take a number down, but you'd mentioned something about needing a sufficient number of surveys filled out. Wondered if you could tell us a little bit about how many responses you have gotten so far, and about their distribution amongst regulatory areas, and then what kind of volume of responses you would need and their distribution to sort of feel like you had a sufficient amount.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis, for the chair. Yes, so the number of surveys currently received accounts, there are few, and these relate only to, at this time, to Alaska. I have received pretty much just the first inputs on Canada very recently. This is mainly related to the probably difficult to use form of the survey that we proposed last year with the pandemic, using the paper-based survey turned out to be very challenging. So we hope to gather additional inputs to the study by using this web-based survey form. In terms of the number of required responses, of course, more means better. If you have a whole population, that gives you the most accurate results, and then it's a matter of how much coverage you can get through the survey. That is really an opportunistic sample frame where willing participants are filling the forms. Depending on the number of the replies, I can either conduct a full statistical interference. This would be if the number of responses reach to probably about 15–20% of the population, or I can treat these responses as expert or participant inputs, informed inputs to the model. That is very commonly adopted method when it comes to this type of modeling approach, and that could be still useful input, given that I would follow up with each survey participant on their replies if any of these replies were somewhat not typical and not fully conforming to the survey form. So, but as I mentioned, at this time, there are very few responses from the paper version of the survey.
Any other questions, Neil? All right, Peter.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Basia. I actually did the survey. I would just say that it was relatively painless and didn't take a lot of time, so I would encourage others to do the same. My question is about the survey and COVID, and I did only the 1 year this past season, and so what can you infer from how that's affected it if you don't have a baseline? Just curious.
Thank you for the chair. Thank you, Commissioner de Grief. This type of surveys are usually conducted on a not as regular base as, for example, biological surveys. The economic surveys are typically conducted every few years because the production structure is typically not changing as much from year to year. So if I did not have any additional information on the baseline, I would use the secondary data sources that are available to me. This includes some of the little bit older data available from NOAA for Alaskan fisheries, some of the data available from the publicly available data sources for Canada, based on the sourced from the Canadian supply and use tables, and put it all, and I would use all these information to build the whole model that incorporates as much as there is available information to provide you with the as good as possible assessment of the economic impact of the resource.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I just yeah, COVID obviously had a substantial effect on our halibut this year, but yeah, I was just curious. Again, it was easy to do, and I would encourage others to do the same.
All right, thanks, Peter. Richard?
Dr. Hunzak, thank you for all your valuable work in this area. I think it's about time we got more economic data, especially on the recreational fishery. So I have a couple questions. This survey that you originated was, what kind of outreach did you have in Alaska? How did you go about getting your participants? Or has it even been sent out yet?
Through the chair, thank you, Commissioner Yamada, for the question. Last year, we introduced this survey for the commercial sector. So the recreational sector survey is being introduced pretty much now. It's been available on the website for a couple of days now, but today is, I would call it, an official launch of this part of the study and this part of the data collection. I should mention, though, that I reached out to a smaller group of charter sector to and ask for participation in what I would call a pilot study, and I asked for the input to the content of the survey, not to for responses to the survey at this time, but really on the content and how to frame the question so that it is clear, easy to fill, and does not cause any concerns when it comes to the type of information that are asked for. So when it comes to Alaska, I've been discussing it with representatives of the, for example, Alaska Charter Association. I had an extensive discussion with, for example, Forrest Braden and Brian Ritchie, who provided very valuable comments from the Alaska side on this survey. But as I mentioned, I also discussed the survey with representatives of the charter sector from British Columbia and the U.S. West Coast.
And my second question would be, is this economic on the recreational sector just charter guided economic information, or are you reaching out to the private anglers and their contribution and their use of Pacific halibut as well, just the private personal use angler?
Through the chair, thank you, Commissioner Yamada, for another very good question. Within the project framework, I am really picking up my priorities for the components to be incorporated. Reaching to the private anglers would be a big endeavor that I don't see an opportunity to do on my own. Reaching to the guided sector through the charter sector associations and reaching to the charter business owners through those associations seem to be feasible component to incorporate into the model, but of course this is not including the full story. As I mentioned, there are two components to the economic value of the halibut, Pacific halibut. These are the first one is the guided sector, where the guided fishing, the charter operators contribute to the economy. But of course, there's also an unguided part of the economic benefit that this economic impact is bringing the benefits to the regions through their purchases and through their activities. So of course, if the project continues, that would be a natural extension to reach out also to private anglers and survey them. But at this time, the only thing I'm planning to do is to bring some of the assessment based on the secondary data sources available and collected by national agencies. So no primary data supported input to the model for unguided fishing.
Thank you very much.
Right. I had a question or two as well. Do you have at this point some documentation of the methods that you can share with more generally? Just yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so the current paper that has been provided as a part of the documentation for the interim meeting is somewhat sparse on the methodology itself. What I'm planning to do, I'm working on a separate manuscript that is focusing on the methodology itself, because it's not a typical way to assess the economic impact, because it was the first of its kind model based on social accounting metrics that links two countries together. So this is it required some of the additional research and work on how to bring those two components together, which I thought is very important because of the nature of the Pacific Halibut and its international management, and this being a transboundary stock that is shared between two countries. So I'm working on this, and I hope more detail on the methodology specifically that will be available ahead of for sure the annual meeting, where the technical details will be made available to you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that would be very helpful to see. I may have missed your answer to one of the questions earlier. I heard a question about how many respondents you've received so far, and I think I heard you say it was not large at this point, but you had shifted from paper to an online survey, and that probably will make it easier for people to respond. And so the focus right now has been on commercial, and the next step is what I was hearing is on guided recreational, and if possible unguided. But I guess also I'm wondering about Aboriginal First Nation value for fishery, and I imagine that's a very challenging thing to do, but is that part of the list of things that are on your list of things to do?
Thank you, Chair. To start with your first comments, yes, we pretty much gathered it correctly. There were just few responses, probably around 10 so far. We received some of the indications from the commercial vessel owners who mentioned that they received the survey and they might be filling it, but that would be after the whole season and the whole after season work has been done. So we've been hearing some indications that some of the additional surveys might be coming. And now with the online version of the survey, we hope also to increase the participation. Regarding the Aboriginal sector, yes, I would love to incorporate all the sectors. The model, as it stands, it allows for incorporation of any desired sector as a disaggregation from the other general economy sectors. But as you get it correctly, there is just no data at this time to incorporate such sector, just because there's no economic information available for the sector. So moving forward, it will be a very interesting component. I am looking into potentially collaborate with NOAA on the new effort to gather some of the information, but those are just preliminary talks at this time, and I don't have anything specific that I could provide you with at this time. But yes, the intention overall is to to bring as much as information on all sectors to the model.
All right. Well, thanks very much. I don't see any other questions from commissioners at this point. Just checking again. So no, thank you very much for your presentation. Dave, I forgot I don't have my agenda. Were we taking public comment now or not? That would be fine with me to proceed that way.
And is my mic okay? Yeah, okay. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Dr. Wilson. Perfect.
Yep, and here.
Well, fortunately, this slide should be familiar to you, but this is the slide that when the IPHC Secretariat reviews the Fishery Independent Setline Survey full design and considers a design for a given year or in a series of years, these are the objectives we address in order of priority as directed by the Commission. But I'm sure you're familiar with these objectives. And you will recall, this is the map of the design presented by Dr. Webster in paper 7 yesterday with the proposed 948 stations. So considering the primary objective of the Fishery Independent Setline Survey to sample Pacific halibut for stock assessment and stock distribution estimation, this is the 2021 fish design proposed in paper 7. Of note, this design allows for 100% sampling in IPHC regulatory area 4 CD&E, meets bias and variance targets, and has 4 skates being fished at each station. This design represents sampling in 25 charter regions, 948 stations, which represents 50% of the full design. And from this design, we project 141 tons of Pacific halibut will be landed in 2021 with an average price of $4.46 US. And this design would result in the fish operating at a loss of $1,686,384 US dollars. Again, only considering the primary objective of the Fishery Independent Setline Survey to sample Pacific halibut for stock assessment and stock distribution estimation. This is the 2021 fish design proposed in paper 7 with a change to the stations in IPHC regulatory area 4 CD&E, reducing their number from 140 stations to 52 stations, a reduction of 63%. This design also meets bias and variance targets, and only meets bias and variance targets, and also has 4 stations being fished at each, or 4 skates being fished at each station. This design represents sampling in 25 charter regions again, 860 stations, which represents 46% of the full design. And from this design, we project 137 tons of Pacific halibut will be landed in 2021 with an average price of $4.48. And this design would result in the fish operating at a loss of $1,515,810 US. So at this point, we add consideration of the secondary objective, which is long-term revenue neutrality, keeping in mind that a more comprehensive survey in 2021 for cost purposes also benefits precision on meeting the primary objective and reduces potential bias in subsequent fishery independent setline surveys. This design differs from the one presented by Dr. Webster, representing the design from the previous slide, with the reduced coverage in IPHC regulatory area 4 CD&E, yet now adjusted to meet the secondary objective by increasing both stations and skates in select charter regions. This design represents sampling in 25 charter regions, 1,258 stations, with an average of 7.1 skates per station, which represents 67% of the full design. From this design, we project 428 tons of Pacific halibut will be landed in 2021 with an average price of $4.59 US. This design would result in the fish operating at a loss of $56,077 US dollars. So this design is the same design presented by Dr. Webster, now adjusted to meet the secondary objective by increasing both stations and skates in select charter regions. This design represents sampling in 25 charter regions, 1,346 stations with an average of 6.9 skates per station, which represents 71% of the full design. And from this design, we project 431 tons of Pacific halibut will be landed in 2021 with an average price of $4.58 US. This design would result in the fish operating at a loss of $226,651 US dollars. So reviewing the 2 main factors that affect the resultant revenue from any fishery independent setline survey design, which are stock change and price change, this is the range of potential revenue. The IPHC Secretariat recognizes the stock trend as projecting a decline of 5% for fish that would be landed by the fishery independent setline survey, and with no further reduction in price from 2020 to 2021, the Secretariat projects that the proposal we presented would result in a loss of revenue of $226,651 US dollars. However, it is important to recognize that should prices increase in 2021 or decrease, this may affect the resultant revenue by more than $500,000, with the realized stock change having a similar impact. And this next slide, this is reviewing the other design we discussed and considering 2 main factors that affect the resultant revenue, again, the stock change as well as the price change. This is the range of potential revenue. And again, the IPHC Secretariat recognizes the stock trend is projecting a decline of 5% for fish landed during the fishery independent setline survey. And with no further reduction in price from this year to next year, the Secretariat projects this proposal would result in a loss of revenue of the $56,077 US dollars we noted earlier. Again, recognizing that should prices increase or decrease, this may affect the revenue by more than $500,000, with realized stock change having a similar impact. And the IPHC is also proposing another extension of the SNAP gear comparison study, this time in IPHC Regulatory Area 3A. This study provides scientific benefit through extending this effort to IPHC Regulatory Area 3A, building on the experiments that we have already conducted in 2C and 2B, and is revenue positive. This study would be conducted in a single charter region by fishing 52 stations with 8 skates of SNAP gear. The Secretariat projects this would result in Pacific halibut landings of 30 tons at an average price of $4.51 US and a net revenue of $120,140 US dollars. And this final slide puts the whole package together, in that when the SNAP gear comparison study is added to the design proposed by the IPHC Secretariat in Paper 7, the resulting revenue is projected to be approximately negative $106,511 US dollars. And thank you, Chair. That summarizes our projected revenue with the Fishery Independent Setline Survey design.
Just checking, are you there, Chair?
Didn't click my button. So thanks very much, Lara. I see there's questions. First off, Bob.
Thanks for the. I've been getting an echo here. I don't know if that's coming through to you, but the question I have is the $4.58 a pound is. Does that what sort of waiting for the the western districts out in Dutch Harbor price? Is that factored into that $4.58?
Yes, through the chair. Thank you, Commissioner Alverson. It is the average price that I present in each of the slides, that are presented in each of the slides is the coastwide average. However, the price is specific to the charter region in which we are fishing in each design.
What follow-up question, Mr. Chair? Lara, what kind of price were you figuring for, say, out in Dutch Harbor?
So in Dutch Harbor, we looked at the most recent year that we fished that area and delivered fish into Dutch, and then we adjusted it based on the amount of based on the decline that we saw in other areas this year to reflect that. Let me look that up quickly. So we were estimating about $3.50.
Okay, that's about what I was going to say it was. So thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Bob. Peter?
Hi, Laura. Laura, is it possible to get associated maps with this as well, or I assume it was done with a specific map or chart in mind? I guess we use chart. As well, yeah, it's a question that's been posed to me, and what kind of bias is introduced, if any, when science is trying to fish and harvest for money? So I'm not sure if Is there an easy answer to that question?
Through the chair, yes, Commissioner DeGree. And I'm sure that my other colleagues could respond to it as well. But yes, anytime that we are increasing the number of, or the amount of sampling effort, essentially, whether it's within a regulatory area or coast-wide, then that increases the amount of science and decreases the amount of variance or bias that we potentially have, as that we would have if we were subsampling that at a lower level.
Okay, so nothing's introduced that those new level of areas where you're looking at are driven by profit rather than general science.
That's correct. It's a win-win, essentially. A win for science and a win for remaining revenue cost neutral.
Yeah, understood. Yeah.
Neil.
A couple of questions. I haven't necessarily followed all this as closely as I might like, so perhaps this is available in the paper and I'm just not recalling. But I was getting a little tripped up on where the stations are being added between the options that you were describing, kind of, by regulatory area. And then also wondered if you could refresh my memory. I thought I heard you say yesterday that at least typically the reg areas that generally make the survey, make money on the survey are 2B and 2C, but maybe you can correct me there or just confirm how that works. I mean, I assume it has something to do with the design as well.
Yes, through the chair. Thank you, Commissioner Davis. That's correct. Essentially, the Fishery Independent Setline Survey makes money or is revenue positive in IPHC regulatory areas 2B, 2C, 3A, and to a lesser degree on the eastern side of 3B. And so those would most likely be the charter regions or areas where we would increase the number of skates to offset the cost on operating the setline survey. And then, of course, the edges are where we do lose money, so we would maintain the number of skates on the edges at the 4 skate level to keep those costs to a minimum as much as possible.
I can't see if there are any more questions. I think the presentation's covering up that part. There we go. Richard.
Yes, Laura. So none of those slides you showed us a revenue neutral or positive, other than just the snap gear. So are these the only options, or are there going to be other options and combinations that bring us to more revenue neutral expenditures? Or we just, because we're expanding full coverage in area 4, we are going to operate in these negative areas?
Yes, through the chair. Thank you, Commissioner Yamada. So our projection based on the 5% decline in landings on the Fishery Independent Setline Survey And looking at no price change from this year to this year, that's correct. The losses, you can see the sensitivity on the slide that's presented here now. The loss with the gear comparison is about $100,000 less than this, $120,000 less than the blue value, and somewhat larger than this value. But you can see that there are factors that are affecting that, and it's quite sensitive to those factors. So it depends on if the landings end up being in line to this year or a little bit less, or if the price recovers somewhat, then we could easily be in the revenue positive side, which you see in the green values here, versus in the negative side, which you see in the red values. So if there was no change in price, it would be at the level we presented in the slides. But our hope is certainly that it'll go up slightly.
Thank you.
All right, I don't see any other questions for you, Lara, at this point. So thank you very much for providing us that assessment on the revenue and with the survey for 2021.
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, I see Peter had a question. Peter, do you still have a question you want to address?
Yeah, before we can decide, I'd like to see look at this a little closer. I know we're not just, well, as well as I'd like to see which, like, what the actual stations you're looking at to project this as well. Yeah, just before I can make up my mind, I would want to be fully informed.
All right, thanks, Peter. So, Dave, where would you like to proceed with this next? When we left this topic off yesterday, the Secretariat was seeking endorsement of what's being proposed for the fish survey for 2021. Is that a good time to talk about that now?
Yes, it is, Chair. And just in response to Commissioner de Grieve's question, the map that's on the screen at the moment is the 948 stations that are proposed for 2021, which is that base cost assessment that was just presented by Ms. Erickson. The modifications between 100% 4C D&E versus the reduced 4C D and E, down to about 52 stations, is simply reducing that number of yellow dots up in the top left-hand corner of the map. Otherwise, as you see here, all of those yellow dots are what's currently being proposed as part of those cost estimates.
All right, thanks, Dave. So we've had a chance to have a little bit of a discussion post the meeting yesterday, and I guess our view is that at this point in time, we would prefer to make a decision at the annual meeting for the 2021 Fish Design Survey. I realized, Dave, that you were talking about earlier that you would like to get tenders out and have people consider those and provide bids by the end of January. But I guess we note, too, that in the past, as long as a decision is made at the annual meeting and the tenders went out to potential bidders shortly after the annual meeting, that provided them time to submit their tenders back to the commission for consideration by the end of January or even into February. There was still time to adequately plan for a survey. And it seemed to us, as we discussed this yesterday amongst ourselves, that we didn't see the need to get tenders out and have people consider them and bid, and then if there's a change at the annual meeting, that means they have to reconsider their bids. And it would be better to do it all at once, once a final decision had been made. So I guess from our point of view, and I don't know, Chris, if and others on the U.S. Commission have had time to consider that, but that's where we're at this point in time, is to leave the decision till the annual meeting, as we've done historically. We certainly don't want to repeat what happened last year when we had a decision not until, I think it was into May. And so they certainly have a decision at the annual meeting once we've had a time to consider this a little more in depth, as Peter was just alluding to, and make sure that we come to a timely decision at the annual meeting. So I'll stop there and see if, Chris, you have any comments you'd like to make.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I have and will continue to largely defer to my fellow commissioners on this issue, to both Canadian and U.S. commissioners. I have no problem with what you suggest, but I would like to hear from Richard and Bob.
So maybe a turn to Richard and or Bob. Go ahead, Richard.
This is Richard. I have no problem. I think, I think last year when we came to the annual meeting, we weren't prepared. We didn't have as much information, so we kind of had to, allow us some thinking time. But I think we've a lot ahead of the game this year, and that we could make the decision at the annual meeting.
Paul, this is Bob.
Yep, go ahead, Bob.
So as I remember last year, following the annual meeting, that's when the COVID thing came into play, and we were very concerned about price structure, restaurants opening, and I'm still very concerned, and I think we need to be watching that if we need to radically change something in May. Depending on how this thing plays out. We're hearing record levels in the United States of this case, and hopefully this vaccine will be making its way through in the springtime, but I'd just like to think about this, and the annual meeting would give that time to think about it.
Thanks, Bob. I'll just see if Neil and or Peter also have comments they want to make on this. Neil?
A couple comments. One, to pick up on Bob's comment, which I agree with, and I think the Secretariat did some very helpful work last year looking at a number of different scenarios and how we would adapt to them. And so I see some of that information shared here, which should be helpful for us to discuss, sort of like plan A and plan B, so to speak, as we get nearer to the beginning of the surveys. And so maybe that's something we need to explicitly plan for a discussion about at the annual meeting. My second thought was more about the broader process that Dr. Webster had been describing for how the design is developed, reviewed, and how others are engaged in it. And in that respect, I think one of the things that I would like to see, and that we talked a little bit about amongst ourselves on the Canadian side, was the idea of looking in the design phase, which it seems is scheduled through the fall, to incorporate some kind of check-in or discussion with a group like the Research Advisory Board that would provide an opportunity for feedback from those who are involved with the survey, or at least very interested and invested in the way that it occurs, I know that we, by the sounds of it, have that kind of discussion in February, but really that is a post-decision discussion, and so you know, maybe they have the opportunity to be looking into future years, but I think that was an addition that we were interested in adding to the cycle, so that there is that opportunity for that group to chime in, and that when we arrive at the interim and annual meetings, we can be informed by what they have had to say about the design as well, given that there may be some sort of practical kinds of considerations that we would benefit from their feedback about.
Thanks, Neil. That's a good point that we talked about earlier. So, Peter, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
No, other than I agree we'll probably be better informed where what state we're at with COVID and market, as well as even feasibility. So I think that waiting till the annual meeting is probably prudent.
All right. Thanks for all the comments and suggestions from commissioners. Dave, I turn it back to you.
Thanks, Chair. My only concern, I guess, that I'd voice is that we have never put out a call for tender after the annual meeting. In the history of the Fishery Independent Cert Survey, it's always been put out in December or January, and there's a number of reasons for that, as we were outlining in the discussions yesterday, primarily to allow potential vessel owners and captains and crew to make their business plan for the year, and then also to try and keep costs down in terms of the various bids. As part of that planning for the year, allows those bidders to provide potentially lower tenders. I think if we were to leave the initial decision until after the annual meeting, you could expect higher costs as a result, as we probably wouldn't go ahead with our Jump 7 purchase at this point, given the uncertainty. And I guess it's for a word of caution. I mean, what we're asking is for approval of a science-based minimum science design, which will go out in the tenders, as it's done every year with the Fishery Independent Setline Survey. And then at the annual meeting, any modifications to that design are then able to be incorporated via a modified tender process. So I guess it's just a flagging that this would be the first time the IPHC would ever put tenders out after the annual meeting, and there would likely be some significant financial and operational difficulties associated with that. Thank you, Chair.
Well, I guess, I mean, Dave, we are going to undertake a survey in 2021, so why would we hold off on purchasing bait if that's the prudent thing to do now? I'm not saying it is. That's not my area of expertise, but I mean, a survey will occur in 2021, so why would one wait if it's better to buy it now?
Thanks, Chair. It's sort of a composition of a number of elements in terms of the volume that we would look to seek to purchase. As an example, this past year we purchased additional bait that we didn't end up using due to the reduced design, and that comes in as a loss for the Fishery Independent Cert Survey at the end of the season. We're able to sell some of that bait as essentially cheap bait at a third or a quarter of the price, depending. And so again, it just figures into those final estimates of how much we're buying versus how much we're going to buy in season. and we'd probably want to be a little bit more precautionary if that was to be the case, and purchase more in season, which is then purchased at a higher price rather than pre-season. But it's from the indications from the staff around me is that this would be the first time we would do it post-annual meeting, and it wouldn't seem. I think there's significant risk there as well in reducing the number of vessels that would potentially be available to engage in the fishery independent satellite surveys. They make other plans for their fishing season. There's a whole lot of unknowns there. I certainly I'm not going to say that I'm aware of those, particularly because it would be uncharted ground for the IPHC to put the tender out after the annual meeting. But it's something that we could always attempt. There, just as I guess a caution, there's a lot of risks associated with that.
So Paul?
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
So David, last year, if the bids went out in December, then they had to be readjusted afterwards. In fact, some of them had to be canceled. I'm going to assume that's an accurate memory of what happened. So if we send out these things in December, can we tell the fleet that the final decision won't come until the annual meeting? Can they give a reasonable bid? Can they give a reasonable
yes,
bid
really too.
based on something like that?
Have been doing for some time now. We put that caveat in there in the sense that it's going to be per station, per charter region, and the bidders on the various tenders understand that that potential variance at the annual meeting, and that has happened in this past year when the sampling design was modified 2 times post-annual meeting. That's something that we just work with the charter operators. And of course, noting that nothing is signed until the final charter agreement is signed, and that doesn't occur until after the Commission has made its final decision on the final survey design. And in 2020, that didn't occur until May. Thanks, Chair.
Paul, based on that, does that give a different view on the ability to send out these bids? I don't know. I don't feel comfortable approving a final survey sampling for 2021, but
Mr. Chairman?
Comfortable making a final decision here, and nor are my fellow Canadian commissioners as well. I guess maybe I have different information about when the bids went out and when a decision was made, and that was based on what I was saying in my earlier comment. I guess it seems to me that sending them out and then revising them has caused confusion this year, and our goal was to reduce that and eliminate that confusion by, having something out tentative and people bid on it and then they have to rebid. And so I guess we were hearing some quite significant unhappiness with that approach and didn't want to repeat it. And so that's where our comments were coming from.
Sure.
Hello, is that Chris?
Yes, sir. I don't know, at the risk of adding to a plate that we haven't defined yet in terms of an intersessional meeting and not knowing what the timing of that might be, would it be a possible medium ground or compromise to try to resolve this at our intersessional meeting and timing-wise?
I think it depends on the timing.
If, for example, that were in early January, that helped take this just raising it as an
thanks
option.
for that suggestion, Chris. So if the intersessional was in January and this was added to that agenda, would that help to address your concerns, Dave?
Thanks, Chair. It's still going to be unusual and quite difficult for us. I fully respect that there's clearly uncomfortable making a final decision at this meeting. And again, I just want to reiterate that we're not looking for a final decision. We're looking for endorsement of the base scientific design, which is scientifically based to meet the needs of the Commission in terms of its stock assessment. We're not looking for a final endorsement of one design that's going to move forward and not be modified. Again, just to remind you that there are other factors as well in terms of our onboard fishery independent setline survey specialists who are active observers in other programs and do seek other employment. And again, I just want to express that concern that leaving it so late is going to have a significant impact, negative impact. That said, happy to move it to an intersessional process, maybe something a little bit earlier than January, if possible, would be useful. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, so I guess, Dave, I'm a little bit surprised. I really don't understand why it is that critical to have this decision now, whether it be phrased as an endorsement or as we're just suggesting have a decision in January at an intersessional. And I do think we're in a bit of an unusual situation in some regards that we're trying to greatly improve upon what transpired this year as far as the design, and as Neil said and others, is that we now have some tools that will help us. But I think you've heard from the commissioners that we're not comfortable making that decision right now and would like more information to do it. And so I'm asking you to consider how you could modify and make some adjustments too.
Thanks, Chair, and fully acknowledging that fact that it does appear that the Commission is uncomfortable making that final decision. So what, as a suggested path forward, is that we will put together as much information as we can to outline the need to go out for a tender as soon as possible, rather than waiting for the annual meeting, and provide that to all commissioners, as I said, as soon as possible, to provide that clear justification on the need to make that decision before the annual meeting. Thanks. Thank you, Chair.
And Chris have their hands up. I don't know if it's been addressed already.
Through the chair, I'm a little bit confused, and David's shedding some light as to the decision that he's asking us to do at this meeting. It doesn't seem like it's a final decision, but it's a endorsement of the design, which would be the randomized and some selection of stations. So everything that Laura presented, all the different options that have different costs associated with it, we're not going to pick one of those, I'm assuming, but would endorse the way those were arrived, and that we would, at the annual meeting or sometime later, pick one of those? Or am I wrong in that decision? What I'm hearing from David is that we're endorsing the design and the method that those slides were presented, but we're not going to really select one of them as the way we're going to adopt. I'm more concerned about the budget than, and I think any of those would meet, the scientific objectives. So I wasn't inclined to pick one of those. But if David is saying that he's asking us to just endorse the methodology by which those budgets were arrived at, and that decision is not going to be made, then I may change my mind as to what kind of decision we can make. But I need some clarification exactly. Is my understanding correct or not?
Yeah, thanks, Richard. And so
yes,
pick one of the what's being proposed. What I was understanding is that if you're going to put out a bid, it's not going to have option A, B, C, or D of each one of the things that we were just presented by Lara. It would have probably the one that shows it's a cost saving or a net revenue of $120,000, and people would then bid on that. And what I've been hearing, at least from quite a number of people, is that there's concern that once you bid and then retender, that's a challenge, and so they'd rather do this once. And so if there's not clarity in what goes out in a tender, they can't bid it, and they can't bid on a whole suite of options. And I'll turn to Dave to see if I have captured it correctly.
Thank you, Chair. The caveat is, I guess, is that when the tenders go out, they are for the particular charter regions that are going to be sampled. And then there's usually a range in terms of the number of stations that would be sampled within that particular charter region. And tenders bid on those specific charter regions. And so in that sense, by endorsing a scientific design in principle, it would allow us to put that tender out with the caveats that the number of stations within those particular charter regions would be within a certain range. And that allows the bidders to provide their price per station, so to speak, as part of the bids based on those caveats. So yes, there is some uncertainty there, but this is the way it's been done in the past every year. And it's only been this past year where the design was modified, I think 3 or 4 times prior to May, that has caused that additional discourse that you were mentioning. Prior to this year, the process has run along those lines, where the tenders are bidding on a range of potential or a number of stations to be sampled within each charter region. So in that sense, if you were to approve, as an example, if you were to approve in principle this particular base scientific design, the tender would go out with that base design with revenue neutrality in mind, and so the number of stations would be put to a certain range to estimate that revenue neutrality, and those bids would be received, and once the final decision is made, we contact the bidders and indicate whether the density of those stations has increased, decreased, or is maintained as per the original tender.
Does that address your question, Richard?
So my understanding is that you go on to, what are you asking us to approve? The design that was presented, or the actual slides that Laura presented, which had costs associated with them? Are we going down to pick one of those 4 or 5 options, or are we just going to endorse the 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 randomized sampling design that Dr. Webster explained to us, the concept of it, and that we're going to be sampling unsampled from 2021, and we're going to, statistically going to be viable methodology. So exactly what would you be asking us to approve?
Thank you. Through the chair, we're asking you to approve the minimum science design that would be needed to meet the data requirements for the annual stock assessment. And this is the way it has normally occurred in prior years. This year we have the advantage that we've built a tool to simulate the price differences as you increase the density or the number of skates, for example. Prior to this year, that's simply been left to the Secretariat to modify in terms of the number of skates per station on that design to reach your revenue neutrality. And so in a way, this is sort of an instance of providing enough information to hang yourself. We've tried to provide information that would give you a better idea of what the base design would cost versus when the Secretariat steps in and adds skates, for example, to each station to reach neutrality. Previously, you haven't seen that information, and it's just occurred. And maybe that's what's causing some of the confusion. And so to go back and answer your question, we're specifically asking you to approve the base design for the minimum science requirements that meets the bias and various variance targets.
In changing my decision, actually. So I think you're right. I think this information, not explaining that this is actually a tool that we could go into and actually play around with, and it wasn't a proposal, added to my confusion. So thank you for that clarification.
Well, I don't know, Dave. You might have added to mine. Are you proposing that we endorse this one right here that's on the screen?
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the design to meet the bias and variance targets, this is what would be the minimum requirements in terms of the charter regions to be sampled, the stations to be sampled, and the number of skates that are required to meet those bias and variance targets. Then it's left usually to the Secretariat to add skates to those sampling stations to change the number to revenue neutrality.
I see. So it wouldn't be this one. It would be these number of stations, but with more skates.
In principle, it's this design, and then with the knowledge that the skates would be added to reach revenue neutrality. So you're not, you wouldn't be approving the number of skates. You're approving the design, as has been done in the past, noting that the Secretariat would then modify the number of skates to reach revenue neutrality or as close as possible. And those additional slides that we provided were to indicate we feel confident that we can get very close to revenue neutrality, noting that the price on any given year can increase or decrease by a certain percentage. As an example, this past year in 2020, we, in May, estimated that we would be $19,000 revenue positive due to slightly higher prices than what we predicted. We were several $100,000 revenue positive. And so you can certainly look at any proposal that once you head towards revenue neutrality, it could still be a variance of $500,000 either way. Thank you.
Addressing people that have raised their hands, and then I think we're going to need to have a vote, but I'll see if there's an option of that instead. So I'll start with Neil.
Okay, thanks. So, I mean, this additional information is useful, but it does seem like what we have heard is somewhat at odds with what I'm hearing from Dr. Wilson, and so it would be useful to kind of dig into this a little more than perhaps we can today by looking through some more details of how this has gone in the past. I mean, I have been provided with specific examples of years where tenders went out after the AM as opposed to before it. Now, it seems like there are some reasonable reasons that the Secretariat would like to get this moving sooner than later, and so I don't want to discount those. But what I don't understand is, I guess, the potential to put bids out in a way that doesn't have people submitting or revising bids in multiple rounds, and what the implications of doing that are. So, yeah, we did it last year, but last year was a bit of an exceptional year, and I don't think we necessarily want to do things that way. So is there a number, is there a way that it can be structured that would allow a bidder to understand what they were bidding for? If you're bidding for one design versus another, I can imagine that the kind of calculation around that is tough to do. And if what the final design is going to look like isn't certain, it seems like we're sort of inevitably asking people to potentially be bidding in multiple rounds. And so what does that mean if people didn't bid on the first time around based on what they read in the way it was initially characterized, but would have liked to bid on the revised design? How are we sort of dealing with those kinds of possibilities?
Chair, would you like me to respond?
Yeah, I would. Thanks, Dave.
Provide clarity. In previous years, the primary tender has always gone out before the annual meeting, but Commissioner Davis is correct that sometimes, due to the modifications that occurred at the annual meeting, we need to put out additional tenders, or EOIs rather, for specific elements, and that's exactly what has happened in the last couple of years following modifications. But I guess just a reminder as well, the table that's on the screen at the moment, and you can see that number in the middle, the blue number of $226,000. That's an example of adding additional skates to the original design that was proposed by Dr. Webster in his presentation, and with 100% stations in for C, D, and E. And you can see that simply a price change of 0% from this year is $226,000 negative, but plus or minus 5% can increase or decrease that revenue by $200,000, and that's something that it's just a prediction, and you're not going to be able to really put a finger on saying that you are definitely going to be revenue neutral. But Chair, look, I think as a way forward, I would agree that this does sound like it probably needs to be moved to an intersessional discussion. I would request that that be sooner rather than later. and we can assist you in providing additional information, including on the potential revisions that occur to the EOI's post-annual meeting decisions, both in the past and then also how it could happen in 2021. I feel that the Commission is clearly divided in a way forward, but with additional information that may be resolved. So I would simply ask that we move this to a decision soon after this particular meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thanks for that suggestion, Dave. I would endorse that, and so I would like to see if we could have something set up for an intersessional meeting. You're suggesting in a week. I don't know that that's possible, but I would suggest sometime in December would be the earliest that we could do it. And so I'm going to see whether that is agreeable to my other commissioners to have an intersessional meeting on this particular item in December.
Mr. Chairman, would you be talking about a separate intersessional from the other intersessional that we had discussed?
I think so, Chris. My preference would be to do them both in January, but I'm hearing from our director that he feels some urgency for doing this in December, and so I seen if I could meet his needs as well.
I would try. I think I would be able to make myself available. Yes.
Okay.
I can't speak for Bob.
Thanks, Chris. Richard's saying thumbs up. Bob, is that okay with you? Peter?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm enjoying it.
I remember last year David put together a page, and it had like 4 or 5 different options for us and the costs involved with each one. I felt real comfortable looking at that and making the decision that we did for last year. Can something like that be available when we have this intersessional meeting, David?
Through the chair, and we do have that available. We thought that this new version would be more conducive to make a decision, but I fear, unfortunately, it's created a bit more confusion. And so the short answer is yes. We'll make that detailed by charter region, what it costs, what are the risks associated with that. We can make that available. Yes.
I think we have thoroughly thrashed out this particular item. So what's next on the agenda, Dave?
Thank you, Chair. Next, we would move to a session on finance administration, and we have 3 elements here. Again, as I said, in the finance topic. One is 13.1, a budget modifications for 2021. The next is the IPHC rules of procedure, and then the contracting party contributions. So if you're willing, Chair, we can step into 13.1, or if you need a 5-minute break, we can also accommodate as you see fit. Over to you, Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know how long, I'm sorry to interject, Paul, but I have to step out for a phone call that I hope will only take 5 or 10 minutes. I don't know how long 13.1 and 2 are going to take. I want to be here for 13.3 for sure, but I know I have to step out.
You're talking about right now, Chris? Well, with that, why don't we take a 15-minute break and come back at 3:45? Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Paul? I had a question in regards to the FIS. It's probably for, it's just something that came up last night when I was thinking about it, and I don't know if here's the best place to get the question answered, or I should direct it to Dr. Stewart.
Well, how about when we come back at 3:45? Or you could send the question to Dr. Stewart now, Peter, and he can address it when we come back at 3:45. Okay.
Excellent.
See everyone at 3:45. All right, I think we're all here. Are we back in the main meeting room, Dave?
I believe we are. Thank you, Chair.
All right, then let's pick up with agenda item 13.
Presentation up initially, and I'm going to introduce the paper, and then I'm going to pass to Mr. Keith Jernigan to walk you through some of the elements. So as you be aware, Commissioners, over the past year we've undergone a significant restructure and reformation in our finance and accounting practices at the IPHC Secretariat. This has included both developing a new chart of accounts to meet our operational needs, and in doing so, identifying new accounting software, which went live on the 15th of June 2020. As part of this process, we have had to reallocate or look to reallocate the prior FY 2021 approved budget from IM096 into the new accounting system and associated chart of accounts. Now, given that this has resulted in a number of key modifications within the way those accounts will be presented to you and reported out to you at the Finance and Administration Committee next year, and then also the Commission, we felt it prudent to bring those changes to you in terms of the new chart of accounts that we are aiming to carry forward, and what it means in terms of the various budget lines and how they will be populated and how they will be reported to you, as I indicated, at the upcoming Finance and Accounting Finance and Administrative Committee. So what I'm going to do is pass the presentation to the PowerPoint to Mr. Keith Jernigan, who's going to walk you through some of those changes, and then we can come back and have a discussion around adopting the new chart of accounts and the updated FY 2021 budget. So if the Secretary could bring up the PowerPoint presentation that's associated with this paper, and I'll pass to Mr. Jernigan. Over to you, Keith.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. As we wait for the presentation to load, what I wanted to do is to review the FY21 approved budget to baseline where we are at, and then an update on the chart of accounts transitioning to the new accounting software. To review the reallocation of the FY21 budget lines with the updated budget to align with the new general ledger. Then also, with that, to break it down by income and expenses so that you will have a full preview of what that new chart of account looks like. And then cash flow for FY20 to note where we were spending money throughout the year by month and where the income was coming in by month. Thank you, Secretary. If you could go to the next slide. Very good. Also, a FY20 financials preview, noting that we are in the middle of getting our financials audited by our new auditor, Moss Adams. I wanted to provide a preview of the balance sheet and the consolidated income statement. Then finally, a review of the reallocated budget and preparation for the end of the presentation. Next slide. So with the approved budget at IM096, I just want to take note of the income that was approved under the general fund at 6.2 million, the expenses at 6.2, bottom left, the supplemental fund at 5 million, and then expenses at 5.2. Those four figures are highlighted in blue for a point of reference into the new chart of accounts. So again, this is just what was approved at IM096. Next slide, please. The updated chart of accounts, what you're looking at is on the left side, you have legacy, and the right you have updated. In the first category of personnel, programs, and then also legacy, administration, supplies and equipment. So these are the four categories of expenditures that we had in our legacy chart of accounts: personnel, programs, administration, supplies and equipment. Our updated chart of accounts has similar categories for personnel expenses with the addition of medical reimbursements, scholarship awards. We also moved training and education up. Operational expenses, fees and contract expenses, facilities and equipment expenses, and other expenses. I will note on the chart of accounts, the goal is to align ourselves with industry. There's a unified chart of accounts version 3 for nonprofits. That is exactly where we're working towards, to migrate our chart of accounts to the standard unified chart of accounts for nonprofits. So these are the categories of the legacy chart of accounts and the updated chart of accounts. So moving on to the next slide. The reallocation of budget lines for income. What you're looking at is the income for the new chart of accounts. The highlighted in blue is the legacy chart of accounts that was approved at IM096. The column to the very left is what we are proposing for the new chart of accounts, pointing out that the fund accounting, or the column on the left, includes 10 general, 30 statistics, 20 research, and 50 reserve. And to the right, the separate columns, if you will, for the Fishery Independent Setline Survey, 45th. So noting the bottom total income for IM096 is 6.2. And what we're proposing is 6.3, a $78,000 increase. That increase is noted there with the addition of revenue from grants. The fifth budget, I'll get into that more, but the number there that was approved at IM096, I will just note that that design was again changed, and that final number changed as well intersessionally. So next slide, please. Again, on income, now just highlighting the two funds, the general fund and the supplemental fund, aligning with 6.2 and the legacy chart of accounts or at IM096, and 5 million for the supplemental fund, just showing that there is an alignment there for both income at the general fund and the supplemental fund. And we'll dive a little bit deeper into that on the next slide. Actually, we'll dive a little bit deeper into the expenses. So here on the expenses, the summary here for personnel operations, fees and contracts, facilities and equipment, and other. You have the IM096 showing the breakdown and the difference between each of those chart of accounts. So you have the FY21 fund accounting proposed budget with the new accounting lines, the IM096 legacy, and the difference for each one. So the increase of $78,000 you can see there in fees and contracts, again for the additional revenue from grants. And then on the right side is for 45th or supplemental. And there's an increase in $76,000. And you can see that there is with shipping, or actually it's listed as operations. Inside of that operations, that is for shipping. Next slide, please. And then here we're showing the alignment to the approved budget on the left from IM096 and the allocation of the new chart of accounts on the right, where the 6.2 aligned from IM096 and the new chart of accounts, as well as expenses for FIS at $5.2 million. Next slide. The reallocation of budget lines, just a further detail of those expenses, so personnel expenses here, breaking that down a little bit further, you'll see that shipping in a moment. But you can also see the detailed, over to the right, I wanted to point out the scholarship awards, that new budget line there. As you may recall, that was a separate fund and a separate bank account, along with the medical reimbursement. And again, training and education was moved up to this category. Next slide, please. Continuing on the reallocation of budget lines, further detailing the expenses. Actually, Secretary, if you could go back one slide, I wanted to point out here the mailing and shipping, the $76,000 and the modified budget for FIS. Now, I know we're talking about different designs for FIS, but whatever our design is, our heavy shipping is going to, is a large expense, and previously that wasn't correctly allocated, so now we're just pointing that out here. Also wanted to note on the highlighted negative $7,700, that was in the IM096 budget that was approved. That was just a slight correction that needed to be made to align with that approved budget. Now, next slide. I wanted to point out the same thing here with the approved budget at IM096 under facilities and equipment expenses, supplies expense. The $123,388 was reduced by $150,000 from research. Next slide, please. Wanted to show this for cash flow or income during the month. As you may recall, well, we briefed at the FAC last February. We weren't receiving any income until we received the first contribution from Canada in February. Although we do appreciate so much the contributions that have been made this fiscal year, the new fiscal year already. We received full contributions from Canada and half from the U.S. in October. So you can see last year that wasn't the case. We didn't receive our contributions in October, November, December, or January. It was February, and then we received half in April from U.S. and then the second half later in the year. Compared to expenses on the next slide, this is why working capital is so important for us. As we communicated and shared at the FAC last year, that the need for working capital to maintain operations. Our expenses there in January and February, as we prepare our field for personnel, we're onboarding personnel for fisheries data in Alaska and also for the survey. And then in July, August, you see those expenses go up, and that's when we're fishing on survey. Next slide. So this is a preview of our balance sheet for FY20. We've been talking about FY21 so far. Here I just wanted to show a preview of the balance sheet by fund or by program. Up at the top you have our 10 general 20 research, 30 statistics, 40 FIS, and 50 reserve, and then a total on the far right. We have our equity and our liabilities for our total assets. So you can see at the very top, cash in the bank at 9/30/20. That is the 30th of September 2020. We had 2.4 million in the bank, with total assets at 3 million. Next slide. Income statement preview. This is a consolidated income statement by all funds at the highest level. Just wanted to show a preview of the income statement for FY20 as it is right now. Next slide. And that was income, and this is expenses for the FY20 income statement. So you can see here the approved budget. We were supposed to be negative $719,000. We were down to $497,000 in FY20. Next slide. And then in summary, the FY 2021 budget expenses by chart of accounts categories, you can see here. And next slide. And this is the income for the FY21 budget. Now I just flipped them around just because of the total. I wanted to show the total on this slide. So we've budgeted to a net income loss of $0. Next slide. And what we're recommending that the commission do is note the paper, which provides the commission with the new chart of accounts and reallocated FY 2021 budget, and adopted the revised FY 21 budget financial period 1 October 2020 to 30 September 2021 as provided in Appendix 1. Noting that there is no change in the contracting party contributions for FY 21. Those changes were indicated as an increase in contributions from grants, and also an increase
All right, thanks
in
very
shipping
much, Keith.
for
Are
FIS.
there questions from
Contracting
commissioners
party
for Keith?
contributions remain unchanged. That concludes the presentation. Sure.
Bob.
Last year and before, were the transportation costs not part of a cost to FIS? Transportation costs
Mr. Alverson, will you repeat
of the 76,000, was that not a cost element to FIS in 2019?
He's wondering if it was not a.
Well, it wasn't contributed. It wasn't attributed to the chart of accounts. That is correct.
So, what kind of cost would that
Bob,
be?
any
Is
other
it
questions?
transporting bait or gear, personnel? What does that entail?
No, okay.
Heavy shipping cost is shipping the equipment, the shacks, and the associated equipment to the vessels. So we put a shack on board each chartered vessel with equipment, including our sea cats and bait.
Yeah, thank you, Keith. Do you mind going back one slide, I think? Sorry, I just don't see the page numbers here. possible. Yeah, what I'm trying to figure out is what you have budgeted in terms of this. Is it going to be revenue positive? Is it going to be revenue negative? I thought I looked at it and you had assumed the same revenue positivity as last year, but maybe I missed that.
Thank you, Commissioner Degree. The FISC budget here really is dependent upon what you're approving. This is notional, depending on what you approve.
All right,
It
I
will
don't
absolutely
see
be
any
revenue
further
neutral.
questions. Keith, thank you for providing that.
Okay.
Overall look as far as the fiscal year 2021.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. If I could also chime in, one of the elements that we're seeking here, as per on the final slide, is to adopt the revised FY21 budget, noting that there's no change to the contracting party contributions. And as Keith has pointed out, the reason we're looking for that adopted budget, revised budget, is so that that new chart of accounts, that new breakdown of the budget, can be used to populate APLOS, our new accounting software, and so that we'll be able to commence monthly reporting and quarterly reporting components, including to the Finance and Administration Committee in January, based on those modified numbers. At the moment, based on the IM096 approved budget, we would not be able to reconcile in accordance with this new chart of accounts. So it's more perfunctory in nature, but we are seeking for the Commission to adopt that revised 2021 budget as shown on the screen here, and provided at Appendix 1 of the paper, noting that there is no change to the contracting party contributions for 2021.
What is being proposed in the paper that Keith just went through for fiscal year 2021 as far as the budget goes. So Richard, you support? Oh, sorry. Chris, didn't see you had a question.
Either way, no, I support approving the budget as proposed. It's kind of a good segue into the agenda item 13.3, because while we do not directly determine the contracting party contributions,
so yeah, we're going to come.
Approval of these budgets is certainly contingent upon some assumptions about third party contributions. And I'll speak to that more in a moment when we get to that agenda item. But I support this. Yes, sir.
I support it.
Thank you. Peter? Neil? Thank you, and I support it as well, Dave. So we can move on, I think, to agenda item 13.3.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Just jumped one, looking at agenda item 13.2. Can you hear me there? Yes, I think so. So agenda item 13.2 is the paper 16, which is the proposed modifications to the IPHC rules of procedure. So if we could have just very quickly paper 16. This is not a paper for decision. It's for information at this meeting and will be presented to the Finance and Administration Committee for final decision in January. So just to recall, this was a request from the Commission at the special session 07 following the increased intersessional activity by the Commission to make various intersessional decisions. And during that meeting, the Commission requested that the Secretariat prepare draft guidelines for intersessional meetings to complement those already contained within the IPHC Rules of Procedure, particularly given the potential for ongoing COVID-19 impacts. And so provided in Appendix 1 of this paper is Rule 6 and then also Rule 11 as part of the intersessional decision-making process. And you can see the red line markup for the proposed changes, which are specifically related for two reasons. First of all, in paragraph 1, to permit electronic means for holding meetings such as this, and then also a new section specifically detailing rules of procedure for special sessions. And then finally, in Rule 11, it's simply changing the deadline, noting that special sessions operate on a shortened time frame in terms of when they're proposed and the decisions that are to be made, to reducing the period for members to confirm that they would like a special session from 30 to 10 days. And so, Chair, this is purely for information, and we do ask delegations to take it back, to look at it, and to consider whether this will meet your needs moving forward for a potential increase or just clarity around the special meeting process. And so that's all I have, Chair. It's just a paper for noting.
Thanks, Neil. Dave, did you want to respond?
Observations that obviously we don't need to get into the details of, but one is we use two terms here, special sessions and intersessional sessions or intersessional decisions, and so maybe just thinking about the terminology. But the other one is just glancing through the timelines here. I wonder if we will actually be able to live up to these, and what happens if we don't meet these timelines for advance notice and so on. Like even what we're talking about right now about trying to follow up on some of the FIS items. And so just maybe thinking about what we might need in terms of flexibility so that we don't set ourselves offside of the rules we create with respect to these special sessions. Something to maybe think about or follow up on. Thanks.
No, I'm just nodding my head in the sense that I would agree that delegations should certainly consult and see if these deadlines would be possible, and we can use some of our experiences from 2020 with these special sessions as an example. Yes, so I would agree with the interventions made. Thank you, Chair.
I was just going to note, but really the same thing, not to repeat Neil, but we're talking about a potential intersessional here in a very short order for the FIS and the MSAB intersessional maybe a little bit later, but I was assuming that those would be public.
Anything else on this agenda item, Dave?
These dates and notices become certainly pertinent.
Other than to add that I feel that, for example, paragraph 9, where it deals with IPHC fishery regulation modifications, may well have a different deadline than general information such as for the Fishery Independence Science Survey, which Commissioner Oliver has highlighted. So this is something that should certainly be worked on between now and the deadline for meeting documents for the FAC, which is December. We'd certainly welcome input from commissioners and other members of the delegation. That's all I have. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So if we could bring up paper 18, please. Chair. Based on a request from the USA to provide additional information on the history of contracting party contribution. So the specific request is provided in italics under the purpose of this paper, and then provided as an appendix is an Excel spreadsheet, which is also available on the website. Now, I'm not going to propose that we bring that up on the screen because it's probably not going to be very readable.
Thanks,
but
Dave.
I am conscious that
Maybe
all delegations have had that for 30-odd days now. And so with that said, through the chair, I would pass it to you to steer us.
See if I hit all the right buttons. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'll start by saying I certainly don't need to lob a grenade into the 11th and a half hour of our discussions here at the annual meeting. But this is something that we've been discussing on the U.S. government side internally for a few months, and it's basically the relative contributions of the parties to the budget of the commission. And just the bottom line up front is, if you go back to 1979 or 80, and the original protocol stipulates that the expenses incurred by the commission would be equally shared, and that they may agree to vary the proportion paid by each party over time. What has happened over time is that the United States, has evolved to the point from 50-50 to approximately an 83 to 17% share of the expenses. And I think there was a big inflection point in about 2001 where the United States increased its contribution by more than $1 million. And well, to put it in a nutshell, for the sake of time, that's increased over time to the point where we've not only kept up with the inflation rate, but we've essentially quadrupled our contribution over time since that, over the past, say, 20 years, where I believe, and I don't want to go through the exact numbers here today, I don't expect us to resolve this issue today or have an in-depth discussion. I want to get it on the table.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chris, for putting this on the agenda. As you pointed out, I mean, the convention does state joint expenses
to support that, but it's basically an annual appropriations process. It's a line item in the United States State Department budget under our international fisheries, but it's becoming harder to justify and get support for that over time when people look at the relative contribution that we've increased over time, and Canada's remained relatively static. And I don't want to give any indication that I want to reaffirm our commitment to support the commission and to pay the costs associated with housing the Secretariat, to pay the unfunded pension liability, and that's part of that 83%, I believe. But in total, it's becoming harder and harder for us to justify our appropriations process, and we just want to get a frank discussion of this. It's an important issue. I think we have a Finance Administrative Committee meeting coming up in January. We've got an intersessional, at least one intersessional now scheduled between now and the annual meeting. So I'm simply flagging this for you and asking that we initiate some discussion of that. As I mentioned earlier, the commissions don't directly appropriate funds, but we approve budgets that are based on an assumption of each party's funding. And so I would just ask, I wanted to raise the issue and ask that we have a discussion of it, not only at the annual meeting, but perhaps leading into the annual meeting at the FAC agenda, So that's my spiel, Mr. Chairman, and I'll
Recommendation of the Commission: the parties may agree to vary the portion of such joint expenses to be paid by each party, and that all decisions of the Commission shall be made by a concurring vote of at least 2 of the commissioners of each party. I think from research that I have done that would indicate that the changes to the budget by the U.S. have been done with concurrence of the parties, but it wasn't a request from Canada to increase the overall funding. It was a unilateral decision, I would say, for the U.S. to make those choices, and that's good. And I think as well, as you mentioned, the pension amounts included in there, and I believe as well there's also payments for the headquarters as well that the U.S. are obligated to cover as well. That are included in the 4.157 million. So I guess, Chris, you're flagging this here, but I do wonder if this is the best forum for those discussions. If the U.S. intention is that they're seeking to see some change in this share by Canada or other options, then I'm not sure that at the Commission level that is the best place for that discussion. But I would take this forward and get some feedback on it and see if this is the best place or maybe it's better placed elsewhere. Get some feedback from them as well, Chris. I have flagged it with them prior to this discussion that we're having now, so they're aware of it. And I think I'll follow up with them to get some thoughts and guidance about how they would see it best to proceed on the concern and issue that you're...
Thank you, Paul. I had the very same discussions over the past few weeks internally with State Department and others. And I recognize that, yes, we agreed to that over time. I'm just suggesting we revisit it, and I totally agree and acknowledge that it's not our decision to make and that there may be other venues that we need to have this discussion in. So, yes, I agree with you 100%. But I wanted to raise it and get your thoughts, and we can have a side conversation as well on this and decide whether and in what context we bring it up at the Commission level as opposed to other avenues as you suggest.
We can have a discussion and see how we would like to proceed. Yep, no problem. So, Dave, I think that closes off that agenda item for now, and we'll be in touch if we're going to be speaking at the Commission level at the annual meeting or elsewhere. But for now, I think that covers it. So we can move on.
That sounds great, Mr. Chairman.
Unless there's any other
your indulgence in letting me raise this during this meeting. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I just saw that now. Peter, did you have a comment?
Thank you. You see one hand raised. I'm not sure if it's a legacy hand or, but I'll pass.
I appreciate that this discussion is probably not, best suited for the Commission, but it's here in front of us now. So one thought I had when I was because I did review this and look at it, is I was curious as to how much consideration, considering, a lot of staff.
Peter, I don't know if you're directing
a lot of
the
benefits from IPHC are in the United States.
I'm sure those types of considerations will be raised.
Generated there and various other taxes. So
as we go forward.
I'm just curious as to how that would enter into such a topic, or if it does at all.
Okay.
I don't have a good answer for you, Peter.
On to the next
you raised
item,
a
other
good point.
business,
I think there's a lot of
14.1, Dave.
considerations that go into this discussion, and that would be one of them.
Did I come across, Dave? Dave, can you hear me at all? Now we can? Okay, sorry. I don't know. I had my microphone unmuted, but
just,
no one
just checking in there to share that we still have your audio.
Dave, I think we can now move on to agenda item 14.1.
Now we can.
Chair, and again, I'm going to be very brief here. It's something that we'll need to work through over the next couple of weeks, and it's just to flag that in preparation for the 97th session of the IPHC annual meeting, just a reminder that that's currently scheduled for the 25th to the 29th of January. That will be held on the same electronic platform, but if not now, certainly in the next couple of weeks, we will need to have a discussion around how we run the conference board and the processor advisory board in terms of whether it's parallel sessions or concurrent sessions, noting that it may stretch the current technology capabilities.
Thanks,
so it's just a flagging at this point. We're going to look at the schedule to see how we can condense it to minimize overlap of those sessions, but just to put it on your radar that we'll be in contact with yourselves, the chairs and co-chairs of those two subsidiary bodies to try and ensure that the scheduling works as smoothly and as efficiently as possible. Thank you, Chair. Correctly, at the moment we need to look at the agenda for the Commission meeting itself to see if we can move it around to minimize the overlap. Just that while we can certainly have the 3 concurrent sessions as we've done in physical session, we're just going to try and reduce that overlap as much as possible. We did think about having the meetings in series, but noting that both of those bodies rely on the presentations for a stock assessment and an MSE and the fishery independent setline survey modeling that Dr. Wester does.
So, Dave,
we decided not to do it in prior to the annual meeting, but just try and reduce the overlap. So that's something that we're going to work with all of the chairs over the next couple of weeks, and it's more just an indication for stakeholders to keep an eye out, and we'll be in communication with any modifications to the normal practice that we undertake each year as part of our annual meeting series. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thanks, Dave.
Thank you again, Chair. I believe we'll have an updated version to you next week following the discussions that we've had here over the last 2 days. That will help inform how we're going to structure those three particular meetings. So I would say within a week we'll have that revised schedule to the commissioners and in communication with the chairs of the 2 subsidiary bodies. Thank you.
All right,
Yeah, just
thanks.
a couple thoughts. I mean, I think Dr.
Any
Wilson
other
is
comments, questions on this
very wise to be thinking ahead about
agenda
this.
item of how we'll organize
And
ourselves for the
perhaps
annual meeting?
This is what you are already anticipating, but I think there could be value in a few things that might go a little beyond sort of a schedule to lay out a plan for how those bodies or the meeting more generally is going to deal with some of these issues, you know, like the process, the logistics, the tech support required, the scheduling, how delegation interaction is going to be facilitated, say kind of in the background. And then perhaps a second piece, which would be a bit of a guidance document or some kind of guidance that could be shared with participants so that we are sort of seeding everybody with some understanding of what they can expect going into the annual meeting, and how their participation and what the process will look like for each of those boards. That may be helpful to have the different components of the annual meeting run more smoothly. So just a couple thoughts. I think it would be useful to sort of, as you suggest, see those and have a chance to talk about them in advance so that we are doing whatever we can to support everybody's effective participation.
Something from you in about a week on this particular item.
Sorry, you may not have heard me. This does appear to be a delay still. No, I was just acknowledging and saying thank you. Yes, I would agree, and we'll certainly put that together. Thank you, Chair.
You had circulated a draft for each party's consideration earlier today, and I know that people have commented on it. I myself have not had a chance to look at it since those comments have been collated into our edits to the document. Dave, I don't know, Chris, if you've had a chance to review the report for this particular meeting. Right, and I'll be doing the same. So I guess, Dave, you'll see something either later today or early tomorrow, and then you can take a look at the combination of comments from us and from the United States.
Yeah, I see we have some suggested consolidated edits. I'll just need to take a quick look at them, and I can pass those forward here very shortly.
Yes, thank you, Chair. That sounds ideal. Noting we are in an electronic format, it makes a lot of sense to adopt the report via correspondence in this case. And we have a few more elements that we need to add following this afternoon's discussions. And so we will combine those with the current draft we have and any edits. And if you do have interim edits, let's say, if they could be sent tonight, that would be great, and we'll send tomorrow morning a revised draft for further consideration. It would then be good to set a couple of days at least, or less, depending on how the two delegations would feel in terms of how much time you need to consider that draft report. report. And so I would leave it at your disposal,
And
Chair,
then,
in terms of how you would
does
like to
that work
proceed
for you,
in
Chris?
setting a turnaround time for those comments for adoption via correspondence. Thanks.
All right, Dave, then you would be able to collate those and then send out again. So I guess what I'm thinking is that by sometime midweek next week, we would have a finalized document.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think it would be useful to definitely to entertain those. So it'd be good to hear those now.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, that sounds very reasonable. So we can proceed on that path. We'll circulate a revised version tomorrow with the new sections from today for collation into the additional edits. And then before we close, Chair, we do have a couple of additional public comments and questions, and I'll leave it on your hands if you'd like to entertain those. Thank you, Chair. Chair. So, Secretary, if you could just bring up the first comment. There we go. I think we're good to go. So the first written comment, is from Jeff Kaufman, who's a halibut fisherman, and it's a lengthy comment, and I'll just read it for you. The MSAB has made tremendous strides, and it is at a point where it can be genuinely effective in defining and identifying management procedures that best meet the Commission's objectives. The MSAB and its operating model allow for stakeholders' buy-in, transparency, and proper vetting of management procedures that the Commission may consider. I suggest that the MSAB continue its work on the Tier 1 MPs, including the directive from the Commission to evaluate the collective impacts of bycatch of all sizes. Also, I agree with the consensus position of the MSAB to prioritise the evaluation of equal harvest rates in all IPHC regulatory areas except for B. The Commission should consider having the MSAB evaluate and define trade-offs that occur due to national shares, formula-based percentages, and fixed TCEYs in the long term, 5 to 25 years, for example. The MSAB has a lot of work remaining to simulate and evaluate currently identified objectives and management procedures. I recommend the Commission not consider directing the MSAB to consider new objectives at this time and to avoid any objectives in the future that are political in nature. This body and its work need to continue to be scientifically based. I am very excited about where the MSAB is today and how the process will provide robustness in the Commission's ability to carry out its mission. So thank you again for that comment. The next is comment and questions from Peggy Parker of HANA relating to agenda item 12 and in particular paper 14. And so this is relating to the socioeconomic study. Great idea to include recreational economic impacts, Dr. Hutchinson, and thank you for the interactive tool. Will the tool be able to give us one sector or the other under several variables? For instance, can we get totals for recreational only or commercial only? Also, can we do anything more to increase input from stakeholder groups? Thank you again, Dr. Hutchinson. And so if you would entertain it, Chair, I can pass to Dr. Hutchinson to respond, or that can be done intersessionally. Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Basha.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And through the Chair, replying to the comment, First, I would like, if I didn't make it clear, the current version of the online tool includes only the commercial sector. Adding recreational sector, this will be presented as a separate but additive component available alongside the value for the commercial sector on the same map. The reason why I focus on the commercial sector so far is that I had the data on production structure specific to Pacific halibut from previous data collections by national agencies. Secondary data sources on recreational sector provide much less statistics specific to the Pacific halibut. That means that more assumptions for the components for which data were not available would have to be made.
Thank you very much.
This is an inferior approach, and I will be
yeah, so I think those are the two comments we have right at this point in questions right there.
Submitting answers to this survey. And that brings me to the second part of your question.
With that, I think we are really complete for this particular interim meeting session. I would like to thank Dave, you and your staff for all the information that you have put together and brought to us for consideration.
Thank you.
There's a couple of action items that we have for intersessional meetings coming up, so we'll get those scheduled. And we'll also close off the report for this, as I mentioned earlier, next week. And as well...
Yes, that's all we have. Thank you very much,
from my point of view, this meeting, from the use of the technology, worked quite well. I think we might be facing a few more challenges when we have the larger meeting with other groups that will be also meeting concurrently. Neil's idea of having some kind of guidance document, I think, for participants is a really excellent idea. We're probably going to need something like that to keep all ourselves straight as we move forward through the annual meeting in just over a couple of months. So thanks again, Dave, and Chris, over to you. Yes, I was. Yes, I was, Chris.
Mr. Chairman, were you kicking it to me? This is Chris. Well, thank you. I just echo your compliments to the Secretariat. I was uncertain how this would work, but this was a really good dry run to prepare for the annual meeting. Great job pulling this off technologically. Sorry for me messing with my buttons sometimes. And for you, Mr. Chairman, for staying online and keeping us on track and on schedule. I was pleasantly able to just go online and get my order in just under the wire for the great little Thai restaurant down the street. And so I'm looking forward to that here after we. And as you know, it's still uncertain whether I'm going to be with you at the annual meeting, but given that uncertainty, and given that we now have some intersessional meetings, I'm not going to say goodbye to my
Dave, did you have any
family yet.
final comments before we conclude?
Process for 30 years. It's kind of like my council family when I was with the council. So at some point I'll miss this process, but I'm not saying goodbye yet, and I look forward to our intersessional meetings. And so thank you, everybody. And
all right.
I just want to
Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.
Both on the Canadian and the U.S. side, the intense engagement we have from our stakeholders is what makes us able to do our job. So thank them too. Thank you all. Thanks.
No, Chair. I think we're well placed other than to just reiterate thanks to all of the support Secretariat staff who have succeeded in making this meeting successful.